All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another week of open office hours. My name's John. Pleasure to be here with you, streaming live today for the next, let's see, half an hour, 45 minutes. We'll see how it goes tonight. If this is the first time you're tuning in, thanks so much. What's the purpose of this? Well, the real reason I started this was to basically take what I do during the day as a career coach, focused on young people. I find that pretty broadly, kind of like the under 40 crowd. And take what I do and try to amplify some of the advice that I give and test out all this new tech and get used to me talking to myself for a period of time, since these days a lot of things are happening online these days. So good chance to practice, and that's the only way to get better. So thanks for indulging me. Let's start as we always like to do the last few weeks, starting with the headlines. Obviously there's been some big news this week, and probably the most important thing I want to talk about isn't what you're thinking. It's not about the U.S. elections, right? Thank goodness that's over, right? But more importantly, the biggest headline that I think is important is that the NBA, the National Basketball Association, my favorite sport, is set to return live to the hard courts in December 22nd, which is like, oh man, a month and a bit away, which is really exciting. Really exciting, since we just ended what was obviously a very tricky and interesting season, and it wasn't very clear when the new season would start. People had been talking in January, even as late as February, but we have word that it will be starting this December for a variety of reasons, most the largest one being money, right? Although there won't be fans, probably not in the early month of the season, allowed into seeing the games. Obviously, the games will be broadcast live on TV, and the league makes a lot of money through advertising and TV rights, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's really exciting. That's really exciting, which means there's going to be a lot of rumors leading up to the next few weeks before the NBA draft, and then free agency, and then the start of training camp. So my hometown Raptors, we don't really know what's going to happen, but hopefully another strong contending team, and then let's let the season start. All right. So today, on the career front, what do I want to talk about today? I want to talk about one of the biggest secret weapons out there that I think most people are not aware of when it comes to the job search process. And not even just, finding jobs. I even just think in career management, trying to understand what you want to do, which is probably one of the biggest things. If you don't understand what you want to do and the whys you want to do it, the hows of getting there usually fall quite short, right? And one of the biggest mistakes people make in their careers is they just aren't that informed when it comes to what they want to do and the whys they want to do. Most of the time, people make decisions on very limited amount of information. Right? And to be fully informed, and this is the mantra of why I started this business almost 12, 13 years ago, is to really make sure you understand the good, the bad, and the ugly of all your choices. Because if you know the good, the bad, and ugly, then and only then can you make the right choice for yourself. But a lot of times when I talk to job seekers of any age, and they tell me, hey, these are the kind of things that I want to do, the first question I'll ask them is, well, what do you know about those things, right? And obviously when it comes to the positives, those are things that you're usually well versed of, right? Because obviously you know the positive of these choices, otherwise it wouldn't be a choice on your list. But when I start to probe about the other side of things, like, okay, what are some of the tricky parts, like the bad side of this industry, this company, or this part of the world that you want to go to, usually I get a lot of generic stuff, like, oh, long hours. I'm like, last time I checked, especially on this side of the world in Asia where I'm based, there are not many 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 jobs anymore. So when you tell me long hours, I'm kind of like, that's kind of the norm, right? So okay, forget about the long hours. What else? What else do you have? And the next biggest thing people will say is, oh, politics, right? I mean, there's a lot of politics in this. I'm kind of like, okay, is there a company in the world where there isn't politics? Yeah, I mean, even if your own boss is an entrepreneur, right? There are always politics. You don't necessarily call the shots. Your customers, your clients call the shots potentially, or maybe some important stakeholders at home call the shots. Like for me, I've got two little stakeholders, right? One age 5, the other one age 2. They kind of call the shots. So when you tell me there's no politics, right? Like there's lots of politics out there. I'm kind of like, I mean, that's kind of normal. So what else? But okay, forget about the bad. Let's talk about the ugly then, right? Because every company, I don't care which one you're interested in what industry, right, and where in the world, I guarantee you there are parts of that company, that business, that can get ugly at times. So what do you know about that? And that's usually where people look at me stunned and like, what are you talking about? What do you mean, right? So it's very clear once we start probing on your motivation that you don't really know, right? Everything you need to know. And then when you go for these interviews or you're trying to find these jobs, you end up sounding very naive and usually, not a strong fit. Not a strong fit. Yeah. Because I think once you know the good, bad, and ugly and you can share that you know all these, then hiring managers, then experienced professionals in those industries, when they talk to you and they ask you, and they will ask you up front, it always comes, question number 2 usually, so why are you really interested in this job with our company doing this kind of stuff? Well, the ones that have really done their homework, right? Or if you come from that industry, obviously, come with a much deeper, much mature answer, right? And that's where you need to go. But obviously, the tricky part in all this research when you're doing your homework, especially if you're young and maybe you don't have a lot of experience and you're trying to move into some of these new hot fields, right? How do you find out about bad and ugly? The good is easy to find. Everyone will tell you good about their job, about their company. But when it comes to the bad and ugly, that's when things get a little bit tricky, right? So one of the best ways, I think, to find out about bad and ugly is to get it from the horse's mouth, from people who are actually working there today, right? And potentially people that used to work there, because obviously ex-employees are even more likely to dish and give you the real deal. Right? And the way to do that is something in the career vocabulary we call informational interviews. One of these secret weapons that I was alluding to initially. Right? Informational interviews are a great way to sit down with people that are doing the job today or used to do the job, understand a little bit from them what they used to do, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and to get more informed about these choices that you're thinking about for your next job or for your future career. Now, informational interviews is a bit of a stuffy term, I'll admit, right? So the more casual and more popular term is, we call these things coffee chats. And this might be something you're aware of. Right? But the challenge with coffee chats is it's not a really new concept. And depending on where in the world you're from or where you have experience in, coffee chats may or may not be something that's known. And may or may not be something that works quite well. So for example, in the Western world, coffee chats are very popular. This is a concept that's been around a long, long time. But they don't work these days. And the reason they don't work is that lots of people know what this is about, right? And they've abused it a little bit. Coffee chats have turned into a sneaky way for you to try to meet with hiring managers, try to meet with people inside the company. And instead of going there to really find out what's going on, to learn more, you go there to kiss their butt, to try to get something from them, right? Try to impress them and hopefully get some referral, get the job, get an interview. So since coffee chats have turned into this kind of sneaky way to go around the recruiter and go around the process a little bit, come through the side doors and back doors, many experienced professionals are no longer really open to taking coffee chats with people because, again, it ends up being a big waste of time and having you, right, just kiss their butt the entire time. But here on this side of the world in Asia, coffee chats are less popular, and it's partly because of a cultural difference, right? When I tell people in Asia that, hey, one of the secret weapons is go out there and talk to people you don't know, invite them for a chit chat because they're doing things that you're interested in, go and try to find out what they actually do, right? Well, when I tell them to do that, people freak out. They're like, what? You want me to go to someone I don't know that I've never met, a stranger, and write them and invite them for a coffee and then just talk to them? And that concept generally, on average, overwhelms the average Asian. So they end up not doing that. Instead, just reading stuff online, maybe, and then just firing out applications instead, going to job boards and just hit submit. Wow. So in that sense, I think that's why the coffee chat can be a very big secret weapon, especially here in Asia, because people don't do it a lot. And at the same time, since people don't do it a lot, people that you would go to approach to get coffee chats don't get approached that much. hence would be more open to sitting down with you and talking more. And I would say on that, to add to that, this cultural thing in Asia about seniors, the older generation helping the older generation, it is very strong. It's probably one of the things that I underestimated when I first moved here. Man, it's almost 15 years ago, right? I mean, I'd heard some of this stuff that the older generation wants to help, right? And then everyone used to say that as part of, the cultural differences here in Asia. But having lived here now for almost 15 years, you really feel that on a day-to-day basis, right? This concept of seniors, the older generation helping juniors is very prevalent across many different races on this side of the world, right? So the precondition already exists. When people ask me, so why would someone want to, take my request and sit down with me? It's because actually it's already built into the DNA of the culture, right? But the real challenge is how do you make it more personal? And how do you make the invitation feel like you're really interested in this specific person and not just interested in somebody who happens to be doing the job? And that's the challenge that usually happens. Most of the time, people are not that interested in this individual that they want to sit down and have coffee with. They're just interested in what the person does as a living, right? So that person ends up feeling like a bit of a stepping stone, and it doesn't feel so personal. So I would say the first big thing, right, as you think about the secret weapon is how do you make it very personal, and how do you show this person and these people that you want to approach that you really care about them. And if you can do that, and that's a big if, right? I appreciate that. That's not exactly the easiest thing. And I think these things can start to work because you'll start to really get a good feeling of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now, one of the other things you've got to do before you approach these people is obviously do some basic homework. So although people are more open in this side of the world to helping, what they don't want to do is spoon feed people, right? So if you get them for a chat and then the first thing you do is say, hey, can you tell me a little bit about the job? What do you actually do every day? What's your job scope? What are the major duties and tasks you have to perform on a daily, weekly basis? If you ask them BS questions like that, then of course these people are going to be pretty pissed off, and this conversation is going to end pretty quickly, and more importantly, there'll never be a second conversation, right? It's going to be a one and done. Yeah. So doing some homework in advance is pretty important, right? And I would say that is probably a key prerequisite in the whole process. So let's break it down now step by step, and let's talk about like a 4-step process today. I'll try to go through it really quickly. And again, if you've got questions, if you're out there watching the stream, if you've got questions, hit me up on the chat here. And I'm happy to repeat and clarify and go into a little more detail, right? But I would say we break down the coffee chat process into 4 steps. Step number 1, whom do you want to speak to? It's kind of like the research, all right? You want to go out there and try to find specific names, people that you want to meet that are doing the things that you want to do. Now, although that might sound a bit tricky, actually it's probably one of the easiest steps because today technology has really helped the research process significantly. Right, this thing called LinkedIn is one of the fastest ways to go out there and do your homework. Literally, you just type in company name, function, and geography, and names will start flying up right in front of you. People that are doing that job are used to do that job. So you already can get an idea right away of the types of people and the specific people you want to meet. So that's kind of step 1, right? Get an understanding of the types of people that you want to meet. Now, once you have that list, here are the people that I would love to meet. Right? The next step is step 2, writing an invitation, right? Approaching these people to get them to meet you for a coffee. But this has a lot of sub-steps in between. And I guess the first clarification is if you don't know these people and you just write a cold email, a cold note, right? You use an in-mail even through LinkedIn and reach these people, the chance of them saying yes to that is slim to none. So I'm not suggesting you just go into LinkedIn, find these people, and write a note and say, hey, can I meet you for coffee? I'm really interested in what you're doing. Love to learn more. That will totally not work, right? So instead, we have to break it down, right? Step by step, and work backwards. Now that you know who the target is, hey, I want to really meet this person and this person, then I would suggest you go backwards and try to figure out, is there anybody I know that knows this person that can give me what we call a warm introduction, right? A little referral. Yeah, can write a little intro note, and you work backwards from there. Now, if you use LinkedIn robustly and you've got a lot of contacts, then LinkedIn can even tell you, hey, this person that I'm trying to meet, am I connected to them? And what degree? Right? So if you're a first degree connection with someone, that means you know them directly. So this is very easy. Then you just write the note, hey, it's been a while, blah, blah, love to chat with you more. And notice that you're now working in this place, a place that I'm very keen on. Boom, that's easy. If you're a secondary connection, it means there's somebody that I know, right, that knows you. So like a mutual acquaintance, a mutual connection. So go to LinkedIn, find out who that person is, and then go to that person saying, hey, I'm really trying to meet this person, and it looks like you know them. Is there any way you could do a little intro for me? Second degree, yeah. And obviously third degree, further out, and so on and so on. Now, again, the chances of you having a secondary connection with some of these people may be a little slim, although not impossible. Today, the world is much more connected than ever before, and you might be even surprised in the power of your network and how connected you might be to these people. But let's say it's not a second degree. It's most likely a third degree or further out, right? Well, what do? Well, again, you just go out one step at a time. Right? You start closest to you and kind of go, okay, eventually I want to go and meet this guy who's working in this industry, doing this role in this part of the world. But I don't know anybody who knows this person. So let me take one step in and try to talk to somebody I do know that might have one of these dimensions that you're interested in. So for example, okay, I don't know anybody doing that specific thing, but I know somebody in that industry. Okay, why don't I go and start and talk to that person for a chit chat and learn more about that industry? And then through that chit chat, you connecting and hopefully earning some trust, maybe they can send you to another person who might then know that person, right? So sometimes you've got to think about it in a longer term, that you need multiple hops to get to your end target. And again, as much as some people think, oh, but this is going to be a lengthy process, yes, it's not going to be a short process. You surprisingly won't need that many hops until you get to the end target. Right? I mean, this is where the phrase 6 degrees of separation comes from. This concept that everybody in the world is connected by at most 6 degrees. And actually, Facebook and LinkedIn will tell you, no, it's way less than 6 based on their social graph that they have mapped out with all their users on their platform. They will tell you it's probably something like 3 point something, right? Which means after 2, maybe a third chit chat, you can eventually get connected to that person. It's that simple. And depending where you are in the world, for example, I'm in Singapore today. This is a pretty small place. I'm very sure that number is probably 3 at the most. 2 point something, yeah, connections, and you can probably eventually get to the person you want because, again, this is a very small place, right? So you start with whom you know and you move up from there. Don't know the industry? Okay, well, what about at least someone in the geography, right? And then you move on from there. Because if you start with people that are very close to you, people that already know you, that trust you, yeah, they will accept your chat very easily. And that way it's not so intimidating, and then off you go from there. All right, after that first chat, then you go to the next one, you go on, next one, and next one, next one. Basically what I'm talking about is probably one of the most important concepts when it comes to work and actually life. It's this concept of trust. If I trust you, right, then things can happen. I can connect you to this person, I can introduce you to other people, but if I don't really know you, well, I may not want to meet you, and even if I meet you, I'm not so sure I'm going to be that, open-minded because I don't know you yet. But hey, maybe there's some mutual person that I know that I trust that you also trust, then we can have some shared trust and we can grow from there, right? Yeah. So when you're starting step 1, again, don't worry about this, just get the names. But before you write an invitation to this person, especially if you don't know them, try to start with people that are close to you. Write an invitation to someone close to you. Right? Now, you need to think a bit broader. Some people obviously want to go the most direct route. Let's just go write the guy. If I know the person, just write the person. But again, like I said, the chance of that person saying yes to you is slim to none. So I would say, don't do it, right? You're just asking for rejection and it's going to get into your head and then start eating away at you. Right? So just start with anybody that you know that knows at least something, that company, that industry, that geography, and go from there. But think broad. I mean, your friends, your family, your extended family, your aunties, your uncles, your cousins. You know more people than you might think. And I get this question all the time. Well, I don't know anybody in this industry. I don't know anybody doing this stuff. I would say, really? Are you sure? Think broader. What about, like, friends from secondary school, primary school, right? Coworkers, ex-coworkers, right? There may be a lot more people than you realize. Now, the challenge is some of these people maybe you haven't talked to in a long time. And that's another problem for another day, right? The ability to not just have a network, but to keep the network active and warm and, not just approaching people when you need something. Because obviously if you approach people out of the blue when you need something, they're not going to feel that good about that, right? No. But think broader. And again, start with people that you know or trust. And again, don't be so close-minded too, right? Some of these people that you know, maybe you don't think they know anything. But again, do you know all their friends, their entire network? So even if you're thinking, oh, well, I don't have any friends that know anybody that's doing this, but, well, they might have friends. So just start with any friend, right? Part of the coffee chat process is just getting back on the saddle and just having chats with people, casual conversations, and connecting as human beings. Because the ability to connect with another human being, I would say today, is probably not as strong as it was years ago. And certainly in the last year, given all the lockdown and all the virtualness that we're doing today, you've probably even lost some of those social skills. Because, depending where in the world you are, maybe you haven't had a chance to meet anybody in a long, long time, right? So I would say, just start with people that you know, even long lost friends. Yeah, hunt them down, write them a note, and just get going. Okay. Now, if you're able to find a referral, how do you write the person? Right. Well, again, email is probably one of the best ways. But I think the key to writing a good approach note is making sure you reference the warm lead, the person that you both know. Right. Because if you write them out of the blue and they don't know you, the chance of them even opening the email might be slim. But if you're able to say, hey, John, you don't know me, but so-and-so told me to come find you. I'm like, so-and-so. Then all of a sudden things get a little bit easier. People start to drop their guard because now we have a little bit of mutual trust and they're more open-minded to reading your note and hopefully saying yes to your chat. So this whole process of trying to find someone who knows that person to intro you is so important, because when you have that person, it changes the percentages significantly, right? I mean, it probably increases exponentially. Now, exponentially doesn't necessarily mean that it's a sure thing, right? I think the stats on cold emails, people reading those and that actually working is probably like less than 1% of the time. Warm emails, my guess, 25, 30% maybe, right? Which might not seem a lot, but that's significantly higher than less than 1%, right? So that's why it's so important to do this multiple step process. But when you do find this person, throw it right up the front. Another mistake a lot of people make in their approach emails, talking too much about themselves, right? Remember the whole point of this coffee chat. The whole point of inviting this person for a chat is because you want to learn more about them. Yeah? What they're doing, what they like about the industry, how does it really work in industry? It's about them. But in the email you write, you keep talking about yourself. Oh, hi, my name's so-and-so. This is my background. I'm doing this. I want this. I need this, right? Yeah. And when people read these things, it's like, okay, what the hell is this about? Like, is this about me? Is this about you? Right? I don't really know you. Yeah. So when you're writing your approach email, less about you. Actually, nothing about you, to be honest. Does the person even care right now? I would say most likely not. Remember the scenario. I don't know you. You don't know me. Hopefully in this scenario, there is somebody that we both know, this mutual person, right? But the more you talk about yourself, the more I think the person's getting a little pissed off and going, okay, I mean, I don't have this patience, right? Are you gonna sell me? Are you just gonna kiss my butt? This is like this Western coffee chat that all these sneaky Westerners try to do, just try to kiss my butt. I don't have time for this stuff, right? I mean, people are worried about their own jobs. Last thing they need is someone desperate for a job coming to meet them for a coffee to try to kiss their butt to get something from them, right? Okay. So less about you. So keep it really simple. I usually just suggest 2 paragraphs. Paragraph number 1, start with that warm lead. dear John, so-and-so told me that you'd be the best person to talk to. Okay, great. About what? About, coaching specifically. And again, go into a little bit of detail, one level down. Specifically, what I'm really interested in knowing about coaching is that, things like this, like how do you even get clients? And when clients come, like when you're asked something you don't really know, how do you handle that kind of stuff, right? I know a lot about this area, but, people might come and ask me about other stuff. How do you handle this stuff? I'm really curious about that. When you can take your request and go a little bit deeper, one level down, that, just about this role, about this industry, all of a sudden people feel like, all right, now this is getting much more interesting and more specific to them. It doesn't feel like you're just emailing this and sending this note to everybody who's a potential coach, right? So, intro paragraph, 3 or 4 lines. If you want to talk about yourself, that's paragraph number 2, optional. And the only time I usually suggest people talk about themselves in their intro email for this chat is if there's something that you have in common with this person, right? So you've done some research on the person, you've checked out their online profiles, you've asked maybe this person in between that you each know a little bit about them, and you feel like, okay, right? Then all of a sudden, I would say, okay, talk something about that to build that initial bridge. Okay? But if you don't have that, don't talk about yourself. Honestly, it's a bit of a turnoff. So then if you don't do that, then it's the final paragraph, right? And this is very short. This is what we call the ask. How do you actually nail the person down for a chit chat? And this is the part that's probably one of my biggest pet peeves, because frankly speaking, people are pretty crap at this part. Most of you are probably going to write something like this. And John, would it be possible to meet you for a coffee anytime, anywhere, whatever works well for you, right? And I would say, okay, that sounds like it's a good idea, because you're trying to keep it open, trying to keep it flexible, and not trying to inconvenience the other person. But here's the thing about this that you are not so familiar with, unless you're a busy person. And all busy people tell me the same thing. The more wide open you are with your request on how to nail people down, the more likely the person's going to look at it and go, man, this is going to take a lot of time, right? Like, I'm not really sure I want to engage with this, but we're going to have to go back and forth, right? Like, you're basically telling me anytime, anywhere. I'm like, okay, well, I don't know, like this week, next week. The whole process just sounds like it's going to take forever, so people end up not, engaging right away. Best case, they wait, put it in the, inbox, and they'll come back to it, maybe. Worst case, they'll just ignore the whole thing. So the best way to get people, engaged with you is to box them in. Windows of availability. Shout out to Lily, who's on the chat with me tonight. Hey, appreciate you tuning in tonight. Hopefully some of this stuff is useful to you. So boxing you in Windows availability, what do I mean by that? Well, again, by saying anytime, anywhere, it's wide open. But by giving a narrow window, then it creates this, not illusion, but the sense that we can come up with a mutual time a lot quicker, a lot faster, right? And we don't have to dance around so much and, ping pong emails back and forth, right? Okay. Now, before you give the specific Windows availability, you need to know that there's some etiquette about minimum amount of notice you have to give someone and a maximum amount of time you want to give someone as well. So on the minimum front, I would suggest that you need to give someone at least 1 week's notice, right? So if you're going to write me tomorrow on Monday and say, hey, are you free Wednesday, Thursday, or even later this week, I would say that is a little too aggressive and not so considerate. So if you're going to write me tomorrow on Monday, you're probably looking 1 week out, the following week at the earliest, okay? At the same time, there's probably a maximum amount of notice you want to give someone. And my advice is probably 2 weeks at the most. Because if you're like, hey, I'm looking in now, it's November 8th right now. Hey, are you available maybe sometime in December? I mean, that's too far down the road. And these days, people can barely see 1 week ahead, maybe 2, but 3, 4 weeks, there's no chance. So by putting out a date that's too far in advance, people just end up giving it a big ignore and because they just think the future is so blurry, right? So you need to give minimum 1 week and at most 2 weeks. Okay. So boxing them in is something like this. So if you're writing to me on Monday, you would say, hey, are you available maybe the following week, Thursday, Friday in the afternoon, perhaps? Now you've boxed the week down to just a really small portion, Thursdays and Fridays in the afternoon. That way now I can quickly go to the calendar, look at that, right? And decide, am I available? And even if I'm not available Thursday, Friday, now that I've gone to the calendar, I will suggest an alternative. And again, it feels like something's going to happen. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in the morning, something like that, right? Or even just Tuesday or Thursday anytime. You've cut the week down by more than half, okay? So that's what we mean by giving windows. Don't just say anytime next week. That's way too broad. Just box them in and give them a couple of days and a couple of half days. Don't get too anal though, right? Don't do things like, oh yeah, here's my calendar next week. Monday 9 to 12, Tuesday 2 to 4, Wednesday 3 to 5. I mean, that kind of stuff is a real turnoff. And if you're into this new age stuff, one of the things that totally pisses me off is when people reach out and want to have a chat with me and say, hey, can you go to my online calendar and book a slot? Can you find a slot in my calendar? Here's my Calendly link, or here's my link to my online calendar. Just find a spot and book it, right? I'm like, whoa, hang on a second, right? Like, whoa, you're asking me for my time and now you want me to go and book into your calendar? Like, what the hell's that all about, right? Again, sometimes young people, and with all this technology, you forget the etiquette. You forget the humanness of the whole thing, what the whole situation is. And that's like a massive turnoff, right? Yeah? Okay. So I think if you remember to do that, make sure you have a warm introduction. Be really specific of what types of things you want to learn about. And then give them some sort of windows availability. That will increase your chances of them saying yes or no significantly. Now, the reality is the warm lead is probably going to be the major one that puts you over the top. The reason I'm going to meet with you is probably not because you wrote a great note. It's because of that person you cited. So-and-so, right? An old professor or an old friend, right? Or a mutual acquaintance, someone I already know that I trust. And because I trust them, I'm going to meet you in extension of that, right? So that's the key one. On the chat here, some old friends are logging in. Ejan has a really good suggestion here. If you're up for a quick chat, just shoot me a yes, and I'll send over a few pictures of times for a 20-minute call. Yeah. I like that, but the only challenge with that is that it requires now 2 steps, right? And I appreciate that you're being nice and asking for their permission before you go and give them the times. But I would say in this kind of informal chit chat, I would just ask for the time right away. You don't necessarily need to create this, hey, if yes, because they might say no, right? And ignore. And you don't want to necessarily give them that option. Certainly in sales or in business development, this thing might be a bit better, right? To get the permission instead of just being too forward and just asking for a time to do the meeting. So I can see why this 2-step process you're suggesting, yeah. And I would say in a sales role, that makes much more sense. But I think in a personal coffee chat, just trying to learn more about stuff, you don't necessarily need to do that. I think just asking for the time, saying, hey, would you be available sometime Thursday, Friday next week? No problem. No problem. Yeah? So after step 2, right? You've done your homework on who you want to meet. You've written a good one, a good intro note. Then the third thing is, what are you going to do to make the chat count? Right? Okay. I've got like actual viewers today, like a lot of you guys. This is awesome. So, okay, I'm going to pause my flow here and take a look at the chat. Joanna, pleasure to see you again. Is there a difference between requesting a face-to-face coffee versus coffee? Yeah. So I mean, that's really interesting, right? Like, how does COVID change things here on the request part? Well, I mean, here's one positive. I think people today are more open to doing virtual chats than ever before. Like, if you asked me like a year ago at this time, said, okay, well, what if I want to talk to someone in a different time zone or a different country, right? Can I just ask them for a call? And I would say you could, but that was even less of a chance because people are not so interested anymore in taking calls, right? But I would say with COVID, people are much more open today, right? Because I think they personally feel bad and they want to help anybody, right? So I think they're more open to just helping in general. But since everybody, like most part of the world, has been getting used to this whole virtual platform, doing a virtual chit chat, pressing a button to get connected, actually that's a lot easier and probably even more preferred because you don't have to do the travel time so much. So I'd say in that aspect, COVID's really helped increase the percentages. Maybe not, 50%, but definitely more so than in the past of someone accepting your request. So for me today, and I was just shooting this note to a couple people last week, I was trying to set up calls for this week in meets. I kind of said, look, I'd be happy to meet up with you in whatever format. If you want to do virtual, no problem, or I'm happy to meet you face to face, whatever's convenient for you. You give them the option to want to do virtual if that's easier for them and their preference, or some people really want to do face to face and prefer because they haven't had the chance, and give them that excuse. And of course, that depends where you are in the world and what the rules are, right? Here in Singapore, it's almost everything's open for business again. You can meet, face to face for this kind of stuff, so that's easy. But obviously in the UK, where we're now in major lockdown, and maybe in North America, where you maybe don't want to do that, right? Do the virtual kind of stuff, yeah. So I would say no problem, yeah. Right? Ask for the time and saying, hey, whatever format you want. If you want to do virtual or if you want to make face to face, happy to come, come close to wherever is convenient for you. I would leave it at that. No? Okay, hope that helps a little bit, Joanna. All right. And by the way, if you have questions too, you don't have to necessarily hit me up on the chat. Right? You can come online today and we can do a face-to-face, which is much more preferred. I know a little intimidating, especially since we're live streaming, right? Don't worry. It's not like the whole world's watching today. Yeah. But if you want to come on Zoom and chat with me face-to-face, if you look in the comments, the description of the YouTube at the bottom, there should be the meeting ID and the password. So just join the Zoom, right? I'll see you in the waiting room. I'll meet you, and then we can have like a live face-to-face, which is actually what I want to do with this whole live streaming anyways. It isn't meant to be me on a monologue and then you in the audience just chiming in here and there. It was meant to be kind of like a radio show thing where people would come in and ask me a question, and we would talk for a couple minutes, and the next person would come in and ask me some questions. So any of you that are on the chat right now, don't be shy. You can talk to me face to face, which would be pretty cool, right? Okay, so while you muster up the courage or look for the links on that kind of stuff, let me go to step 3. And step 3 was how to make the chat count, right? I mean, getting the chat is already a big one. But if you go into that chat without preparation, you kind of wing it, you're kind of blowing the opportunity. Right? So I think there are a lot of things I need to talk about making the chat count. But let's just start with the pre-chat preparation, and then we'll talk about when you're there in the chat, how to make that really good. So in the pre-chat, I mean, you can think of it like an interview almost, right? But in terms of this being like a job interview, yeah, you just need to do all the homework about this person. Know something about them already, know something about the industry, the basic things, and obviously coming up with a list of questions that you want to ask them. And that should be fairly obvious, right? Fairly obvious. On top of that, though, if you're going to meet face-to-face, the other thing that's going to be important is the venue and the timing and all that kind of stuff. So my advice is let the other person choose the venue and the timing and where to go, right? Unless you know the area really well, right? I would suggest you just say, hey, I'll come wherever close to you, and then ask them to pick a spot, and then you meet them there. Right. But then obviously the prep work is making sure you get there on time, actually ideally in advance, so you can grab a table. And I guess this is another benefit of, COVID. There's probably not as much traffic out there. Having said that, a lot of the coffee shops now aren't as packed because they've got to put in the social distancing, so there might not be as many tables. So getting there in advance is going to be probably as important as before, right? So you can get there, you can get a table, because the last thing you want to do is show up at the spot and there are no tables to sit and you're about to meet this person, right? That's going to get super awkward, right? So make sure you plan in advance, get the timing down, and grab a seat, okay? And I think after that, then you want to make sure you have a good range of questions, right? And then think about the sequencing of the questions. So in terms of range of questions, most of the time you're going to stick to obviously career-related, professional, job-related questions. But don't be afraid to talk about personal things as well. I mean, the most important thing at this end in the chat isn't just to get information out of them and information about the job, right? The thing that you're interested. I would say the best goal, the uber goal, is to really connect with that person at a human level. Develop trust, right? Because trust is one of these keys. And to connect with somebody, I think you want to connect with them at as many levels as possible. Not just at the professional level, but also at the personal level. Now, again, at the personal level, this is where it gets tricky and people are not as comfortable. What type of personal stuff is okay? What kind of stuff should I not talk about, right? So, I mean, things like obviously like religion, you don't want to talk about that, right? Family, perhaps you don't start with that. You see what they say, right? But things like interests, like hobbies, sports, shows you're watching on Netflix, or, how are you been? Are you into the cooking thing now? Sourdough, what's been going on? How are you doing on the COVID thing? I mean, there's so many things you can talk about on a personal level, and I really encourage you to make sure in your chat you try to hit some of this. Right? Okay. And I would say maybe even right at the beginning, obviously, to build a bit of a bridge. But, I mean, not just at the beginning and not just at the end. Because when you do it just at the beginning, I feel like you're just going through the robotic script. Okay, build a little rapport, start personal. Okay, now that I've done that personal touch for 5 minutes, now let me hit you with all the, businessy questions and all that kind of stuff, right? You want it just to feel like a chit chat. So you're talking about a little bit here and then a little bit later, right? Connecting at multiple times on multiple levels. Okay. And as you start to see how willing they are to talk about the personal stuff, you can figure out whether you want to talk a little bit more about stuff, or maybe you have to kind of dial it back and get back to the business at hand. Everybody's a bit different, right? Everybody's a bit different. On the professional front, remember, obviously at the beginning, you want to start with positive things about the job that they're going to be excited about. But don't be afraid to eventually try to probe about some of the challenges of the job, right? And this is the bad and ugly part that I was talking about at the beginning. To make fully informed decisions, you got to know the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? So you need to know a little bit about all that, and don't be afraid to ask. So start with the good stuff first. I mean, that's always the key, right? And then, once you feel like you build a little trust, then don't be afraid to go there. Now, of course, once you start asking about some of these tricky moments, and again, you need to be a little more subtle and more nuanced in how you ask about this. Like, don't be like, hey, what part of the job do you hate? What sucks about your job? I mean, don't be so direct like that. Yeah. But as you ask about this, read their body language and see how open they are to really talking about that. Because if you start probing and all of a sudden they get really defensive or they give you really short answers, then okay, maybe you need to go back to good stuff. Maybe you haven't built enough trust yet. Right? And then you back up from there. And frankly, that's what it takes to be a good conversationalist, right? You don't want to just run through a script, feel like you're an interviewer, like a journalist. Okay, let me ask you question number 1, John. Then let me follow my script question number 2. You want to feel like a natural chit-chat, right? And sometimes you're going to have to change, subjects and go from there. And if things are working, then you want to keep going on that kind of stuff, right? Okay, I'm really excited because I see someone wanting to enter the Zoom session today. Another old friend here. Lynn, I see you. I think we're on a bit of a delay, so I don't know if you're going to know if this is going to catch you off guard. But anyways, this is my little warning that I'm going to admit you now. And let's see what you want to talk about. All right, so my first guest. This is very exciting. There you are. All right, can you hear me, my man?
I can. Hello, John.
With the camera on too. We are streaming live to the world today. You are my first official guest. Right?
Good.
On the show. So this is awesome. Yeah, what can I do you for? What do you want to chat about today? Or you just want to check in, say hi?
So saying hello, yeah, absolutely. I think obviously you have we met a year ago.
Yeah.
And we see a lot of things that you actually tonight I just came in out of random because I saw your post on LinkedIn.
Cool.
Anyway, long story short, I came in, thought I'd drop in a listen, and a lot of advice that you shared today was the advice that you shared with me exactly 1 year ago, when we first met. And I don't know, I thought I'd just come in and say thank you as well, because I think one of the biggest things that you taught me was actually just open up and be daring and just kind of go out and have some fun with this year.
Yeah.
And hopefully, I mean, that's why I turned on the camera and joined in Zoom, because
awesome.
If you don't take it the first step, you'll never get anywhere. So
yeah. Thank you. So that all that stuff I said kind of worked, right? Just let's go on the record to say that. And if it's BS, let's go on the record now and say, some of that stuff was a little BS, John, right? It's okay. Let's give the hard truth to the audience, right?
No, it's definitely worked. I think to the audience, right? I think I came in with a bit of a negative connotation to the networking scene, right?
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I think a lot of people, I don't know whether you guys have spoken about it before, but a lot of people thought that networking is about going in and finding a job of someone, yeah?
Yeah.
And that mind shift changed with when you had mentioned or educated me that networking is not about finding a job. It's actually the better word to use is actually mingling.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah, and the magic number, yeah, 2.6 or 3,
Yeah,
somewhere around there.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know what
yeah,
you're talking
yeah,
about here, but
yeah.
um, yeah. So I thought I'd drop in and obviously have a conversation with you. And yeah, very cool. Good to see you doing well, and
Thank you,
obviously
my
giving
man.
back as well.
Yeah. I want to get you back on the record some more because we did a session. It's been a few months, right, where we had you live. I apologize. I'm still editing stuff, right, and I actually lost access to our corporate YouTube account where we're supposed to post that thing, but I'm getting around to it, right, and I'm gonna get our session, the one that we did before, edited and up live so you can see that. But we should do another one as we get a little
Agree,
closer to the
absolutely.
end. Yeah.
Only one call away in the virtual world anyway. I'm in Hong Kong, you're in Singapore, but thank
Yes.
God we got Zoom.
Yeah, well, we can do the travel bubble is almost ready to go, right? I don't think Hong Kong's gonna ask me to go up yet, but I could potentially go, right? They've got the bubble starting soon, so
Well, yeah, 4 COVID tests. I don't know how willing you do that. Willing to do that.
yeah, yeah, I know. Crossing my fingers, crossing my fingers. But for you, my man, right? I mean, that's a little bit of a draw. Plus, I got family and other things, right? Yeah. But how
Good,
you
good.
doing? You're getting close to the end. You're enjoying the journey.
Yes, yes. So, or about to graduate, right?
Yeah,
With one or 2 months left.
yeah,
Obviously done with school and now fully rolling back into the workforce as well. Actually, some of the networking stuff that we're talking about, it's surprising because that skill set you actually take it with you even after your education. Yeah.
for sure.
For me, one of the biggest things that I did during my internship, during my MBA, was this networking skills that I built while I was studying.
Yeah,
And what you start realizing that because internships are generally quite short by nature, 3 to 6 months. And for someone who wants to convert it into a full-time job offer, you really have to make the most impact.
yeah,
But at the end of the day, the work that they give you, I mean, you're still an intern. They're not going to give you real responsibility,
sure.
right? And I thought to myself, one of the biggest realizations through there is that when you go in as an intern in an organization, 50% of the time is about demonstrating the skill sets and knowing what you can do and do some good work and so you can show it off. And actually, the other 50% is actually networking with the people,
For sure.
finding
Yeah.
out what the business is about.
Personal brand, some would say, mingling, connecting. I mean, that's really what it is, right? At the end of the day, people want to work with people that they like, and people like them. And if you don't get out there and try to introduce yourself and they don't know about you, or you just want to hope that your work will speak for itself, which is kind of a very reserved and very Asian mindset. And I remember when I was starting, it was like that. Hey, just do kick-ass work and let the work speak for itself. Doesn't exactly always work that way, right? Is that why you're wearing that shirt today? Yeah?
I'm wearing a shirt for I'm wearing a shirt for a good reason. Absolutely, we're going to see brighter days. I hope.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Crossing my fingers as well. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Well, look, I don't know if I hope we'll chat again before your year's out, but if not, when the year turns, for sure, we need to catch up again, right? Then
absolutely.
hopefully you'll be very relaxed. Are you going back to where you were before? Is that your
Yeah,
plan?
BSF,
Yeah.
BSF.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
so
So that's a done deal.
a
And
done deal.
when's the start date? Don't tell me
Uh,
it's January first week. Please tell me you gave yourself a little bit of time.
no, well, the funny thing is, I am due to fly out to Shanghai in a week's time.
Okay.
So I've done work good enough for myself in the organization that they've extended my internship and they want to relocate me from Hong Kong to Shanghai for the rest of the year to learn more about the business
Okay.
and then get me back to Hong Kong and roll into a full-time role. So,
Okay. But get some
uh,
time off, my man. Get some time off, right? Even if if you can't go anywhere, you just need to recharge, right? Yeah, because once you're back in the game, it's gonna be a little bit tricky, right? So give yourself a month at least if you can, if you can.
I have plenty of time to recharge during quarantine in Shanghai. Yeah.
I know, but no, but you can't go anywhere. You're gonna be, you're stuck there, right? In a hotel for 14 days. That's
Yeah, yeah,
crap.
yeah.
That's
That's
not a
correct.
vacation. Yeah, I'm talking about like you can actually go out to do some of the hiking in the mountains in Hong Kong. Maybe you never did that, right? You live right behind those things, and you can stuff like that,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Go
yeah.
ride the cable car, go up to the peak, all the touristy things. Maybe you haven't had a chance,
I
right?
went to Disneyland a few weeks ago.
There
So
you go. Okay, okay, yeah.
No, and actually, again, that's another realization reflecting upon back the education piece, right? In MBA,
Yeah.
so you had 16 months,
Yeah.
and coming in and being in Asian school, you thought that the marks was everything and was going to get
Right.
you the dream
Right.
job. Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, if you look at the people who has done well during this pandemic, um, or this period, or who's done landed the job offers, are generally the people who are doesn't need to be the top of the class, not the top 10%, but it's the people who knows how to communicate with others, yeah, and reaching out and finding out where the opportunities are and networking and building their relationships. I think those are the people that have done well for themselves. So again, tying it back to the conversation that we're having before here, yeah.
I
It's
remember that. I remember that. I'm gonna go to the recordings and find that clip and cut that clip out and start sending it around, right,
oh,
to all the
stop
new
it.
MBAs, right? I mean, this thing here. If you want to know what's happening right now, right from the market right now, here's a guy. It's giving me the intel.
I'm very surprised because I would I mean, had I known this link earlier, right, I would have blasted this for every single person in my
No
unit.
problem. Well, this is only the third or fourth time I'm doing it. Every Sunday, my man. So feel free if you want to just hear my voice because you miss me so much. Every Sunday at 9. That's when I'm doing it. Yeah. I have someone else waiting in the waiting room though, so I don't want to cut it
100%.
too short. But it was, hey, thanks so much for starting this. It feels like it's snowballing now, and I needed somebody to do that. So Lynn, really appreciate
Good.
that, my man.
Everyone,
Yeah.
take the first step forward. I'll leave you back to it. I'll
Okay.
listen. I'll sit
Cool.
quiet.
Cheers.
See ya.
Joanna, I see you in the waiting room. Thanks so much for hanging out. Now that I'm gonna kick Lynn out, let's bring you on here. All right, this is very exciting for me.
Hi, hello. Hi, John.
Hey.
It's been a while.
Yeah, I was like, is this the Joanna that I think it is? And I was like,
Yes,
okay.
from the workshop, the
Yeah, yeah,
SME.
yeah. Yeah.
I
So, what can I help you with today? What do you want to chat about? It can be about anything, right?
Yeah, so I actually have two questions.
Yeah.
So one of the questions is I like to, find people and connect, but I'm not like looking for a job or anything. It's just
Yeah.
like out of like pure interest.
That's the best time. Yeah, that's the best time. Like when you don't actually need anything, that's when all your requests are very pure, right? Coffee chat's about learning more. That's really the key. And not only do you need to say this, you need to believe this. Now, the problem is job seekers, especially students in their final years, although they get it, right, they don't really want to learn more. They'll say it, but what they really want is a job, right? So
Yeah.
once I start to hear it, I can kind of already sense. There's this sixth sense that humans have that you're here to kiss my butt, aren't you? So when you go, I don't need anything. I just want to learn. That's the best. That is literally the best time. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering like what will they gain? Because I mean like I'm still quite young as well. So like talking to them, I don't know if they also want to like meet me, you know?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question, and people ask me this a lot. Hey, so what do they get for taking this chat, right? Because some people talk a lot about when you're doing this networking thing, and again, I don't like to use the word networking. If you heard me talking to Lynn, mingling is the word I like to use. But there's this concept that hey, it's got to be a two-way street, right? So you should try to give first, because if you can give first, then the person, when you're asking, it doesn't feel like you're just always take. And although I appreciate that advice, and I can kind of see why people want to say that a lot, I would say in this specific context, it's a little bit different, right? Remember, what are we asking? We're asking for information, for knowledge. And I believe knowledge, experience, your experiences, your stories, those are free, right? Yeah, now if you need me to do something for you, that's different. That costs you something. If you need some hookup, then you better be freaking giving something, right? Because you can't just take. But if you just want information, experience, I think that kind of stuff doesn't cost. And if you want to make it worth the person's time, what are they going to get out of it? It's that when you come to these chats, you've done some homework. So that when you ask the questions, they realize that, okay, look, I'm already taking this because I want to help. That's part of it. And because we have that warm lead, so it's maybe a little favor to that person. Okay, so it's not going to be a total waste of time. But if you come in and go, wow, blow my socks off with all these advanced questions. Like, wow, you already know some stuff. You've been trying to do it, but you're an outsider. I'll feel good about that. I'll be like, oh, okay, I can really help this girl now, right? But if you go in and say, hey, I don't know anything, I just want to learn, can you just tell me everything? I'm like, okay, here we go. I got to spoon feed. This is going to be a waste of my time. She doesn't really know anything. And then they get really, I think a little more disappointed that way. So what they'll get is the excitement to have helped. somebody, someone who's already trying to help themselves, and they can maybe push them a little bit over the top, right? And say that, hey, I had a little part in helping this person, right? Or meeting someone interesting at the end of the day. Yeah.
Okay. That's really good advice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't get too intimidated by the fact that, hey, I don't know what I can give them, and would they want to meet me, right? And when I first started this in the summer, this concept of open office hours, I just posted on my LinkedIn saying, hey, if anybody wants to chat, just book a time in my calendar and just do this, just like you're doing here with me. I was always like, who the hell's going to want to meet me? Hey, nobody's booked a session yet, da da da. But eventually people started booking stuff, right? And I was like, okay, is this going to be a waste of my time? Some of these people, I don't even know. I said specifically that we had to have met, but some people hijacked it, right? And said, hey, we've never met before, but I still want to talk. I'm like, okay, fine. If you really want to talk to me so bad, great, okay. And then when we went in there, like the chats were really cool, right? Again, I didn't really know, yeah? But they had clearly done some homework about me. That's why they wanted to meet me. So I think it's the same concept right there. If you've done homework, you know some stuff, and you can make it personal. Hey, John, I don't want to just talk to you because you're a coach. I want to talk to you because of this that you've done coaching, or that, or I saw this. Now I'm like, okay, she actually wants to talk to me. She just doesn't want to talk to somebody that happens to know some stuff. She wants to talk to me. It's that personal touch, right? And people will feel that, and they'll feel good about that.
Okay, my second question.
Okay,
is
yeah.
that, after you meet like once, like, my question is always, do we have to meet again? Or like,
Yes.
Can it just be like a one-off thing, or like, maintain? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I mean, you can do the one night stand if you want, right? I mean, the analogy is quite the same if I had to be really honest here, but I would prefer you try to think about this a longer term thing, right? Yeah. I mean, again, we're not meeting every week or every month, but I think if you go to these chats and you want to learn something, and that's really why you want to do this, right? I don't know how much you're going to be able to learn in just one chat. You can learn some stuff, but time will be limited. At most, half an hour. And if you're lucky and they have more time and they want to spend more time, maybe an hour. But you're probably not going to get more than that. And I think, again, if this person's someone you really are interested in and you're starting to connect, there's tons of stuff they can tell you beyond. And I would suggest you try to continue to build this relationship. Obviously, over time, I'm going to tell you better stuff too, right? I mean, the first time I don't really know you, so I'm going to be a little bit more guarded about what I say, especially about the good stuff. So Yuzhen's here is asking me in the chat, hey, how do you initiate conversations to talk about the bad and the ugly? Well, again, the first time when you ask, I may not say that much, right? But over time, I've met you second time, a third time. Now, like 3 times we've met. That means I must think you're kind of cool, right? Because if you sucked and you're kind of boring, it's one and done. There's no second date, right? You get a first date, but there's no second date if you're boring, yeah? So you gotta have some chemistry, you gotta have some trust. So I would always encourage you to try to, keep it going. Right? And again, it doesn't have to be super active, yeah? But, at least a second one close to the first one. The third one maybe spaced out a little bit, right? But at least a second one is a follow-up to try to get more and more information. And that person will lead you to other people, and then that's the beauty of it. When people say, I don't know anybody, actually, all you need is one person. One person that you know that can get intruded, that you can build a little trust. And if you build their trust, they can send you to another. And all of a sudden, it opens up a whole new world that you might not have thought about before. Yeah.
That's true. Thanks so much for sharing. And also, I want to thank you for the workshop that you did for us.
My pleasure. My
It was really
pleasure.
nice.
Yeah, you don't have to thank me. I get paid for that. So that's it's all good. Yeah. Tell me why you're a little hesitant, though, of wanting to do more. I love the fact that you don't need anything. You just want to learn stuff. And that's an awesome spirit. But this question of like, hey, do I have to do another one with them?
I think it's more like because I feel like I'm junior and they're like quite senior. So like, what do they gain from me? So exactly what you were saying, like, I just maybe a bit insecure.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's like I don't need to be like a one-way street, right? Kind of thing. Yeah.
Sure. Well, okay, so let's go into even a little bit more since you mentioned that. I mentioned the whole feel-good factor, which is a part of it, especially senior people. They want to help junior people. It's in the DNA of Asians, of Singaporeans, right? So you already know a little bit of that. So that part's already there. But if I were to be more tactical about it, right? Why do I want to meet you and why would I continue to meet you? Well, if I, in our first chat, think you're kind of smart, right? I'm thinking maybe there is something I could do to help you down the road. Huh? And again, why am I doing that? Just because I'm a nice guy? No. Because if I help you, I connect you to someone I might know that might be looking for something, someone like you, and I send you over to them one day, well, don't you think that person's going to think I'm kind of smart and I'm kind of connected, right? Because I'm associated with all these smart people? Yeah. So there's actually tangible benefits I get, right? And if I help you, you're going to think I'm a nicer guy, right? So all of a sudden, my reputation increases in your world, and to all my friends that might be hiring, looking for smart people. Instead of going through all the resumes, like all this SU United BS that's coming through here, going through all this stuff, I can just say, hey, this is girl Joanna Chung. I've met her a few times. You should check her out. She's pretty interesting. She's interested in the kind of stuff, right? And they go, oh, yeah, send me your resume. And then they look at you, and then they go and meet you, and then they think you're awesome. I just saved them a whole crapload of time and effort, right? And they're going to owe me one, too. So you don't have to worry. There's benefits of this person, right? Yeah. But you can make it more worth their while by just being smart. And I mean, smart meaning doing your research, right? Just show that you're interested, genuinely interested. Ask questions that aren't available on the internet, right? Like, don't ask them stuff that you can read on the website. But if you start doing that kind of stuff, the rest takes care of itself. Wow.
Okay.
And that's
Thanks
how the real
so
world
much
works.
for sharing.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
Feel better now.
Good. Look, give it a shot and come back and chat with me some more and let me know how it goes, right?
Sure,
I'd be
I
very
will.
curious to hear the experiences.
Sure, I will. Thanks for
Okay.
sharing.
Cheers. Wow, tonight's been very exciting, very interesting. Having some people join us. If you're watching and you're thinking, hey, should I jump in on this? I'll do it again every Sunday until the end of this year, and most likely probably, going forward into the new year. I'm going to try to keep this going. I just want to make sure I don't leave Izan hanging here when she asked about how you initiate some of the bad and the ugly. The key to asking good questions, especially about the bad and ugly, is the setup. A good question always starts with a good setup. So if you just ask things like, so what are the things that you don't like about the job? I mean, that feels like an interrogation type question, or a question that a journalist would ask. So a better way to lead into these things is to talk about what you do know. Hey, John, thank you so much for all those things about the positive side. I just want to switch gears because obviously every job has its tricky moments. Yeah, and I wanted to get a little bit of your experience on this. Here's some of the stuff I've found out from others, right? People have told me that sometimes it can be like this, and like this. Would you agree on that? Or is there something different you would say? So by throwing it in there like that, setting it up and talking about what you know, what you've heard, right? What others have said, that allows the conversation to come across a little bit more natural. And at the same time, it doesn't require the other person to go on the record and say something, right? It just asks them to comment about something that you've said. And that changes the dynamics a little bit. Because if you ask me, hey, what are the things that are not good about this industry? Now you're kind of forcing me to go on the record to say something. But if you say, hey, I've heard of these things, is it true? That's different, right? That allows me to speak a little bit more freely that way. So those are some of the ways that I've used before that usually work out well, right? And again, when you start with stuff, it's a lot better than just saying, hey, I don't know anything. I know there's some tricky things. There must be. Every job has tricky things. Please tell me what the tricky things are, right? But of course, over time, yeah, and the more you have conversations with this one person and with people in general, the more they're going to open up on these things a lot quicker and a lot faster, right? And that's the beauty of it. By doing this thing, all you need is taking someone else's words and then using it on the next chat. Hey, I was talking to this guy, don't quote the person. I was having coffee with this person. They were telling me about this. What are your thoughts about that? Oh, it's a little different. Okay. Right? And then the next one is, hey, I kind of coffee chats. They were telling me this and this. What's your thoughts about that? Oh. And once you're able to show people that you've been having multiple coffee chats with multiple people get excited about that. They're like, wow, you are really legit, right? You really want to go and try to learn stuff. You've talked to so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so. And that helps a lot. Okay? Hope that helps a little bit. Okay, I'm super energized, and I feel like I can go for another hour, but I feel like that's probably going to be an overkill, and I should probably save some stuff for the next week. So for those of you that have been following, thanks so much for your support today. All of you, great to see you next Sunday, same time, same place. We'll be here. And if you feel bold enough, come on the Zoom like we saw Joanna and Lynn do today. That'd be awesome. All right. Until then, cheers, guys. Good night.